Welcome, Innerspace Surfer. Today's episode is part of our ongoing series, Demystify the Mystical. I can't wait to introduce you to my friend Jerry Zaryczny, an amazing hypnotherapist and strategic intervention coach, and the creator of the Institute of Human Imagination. Jerry's goal is to awaken as many people as possible to the power and influence that self-talk has on each person, and how to revise it to affect the quality and caliber of life experiences in desirable ways. Born and raised in Chicago, he grew up in the Windy City during the days of movies such as Ferris Bueller's Day Off and Weird Science. After high school, he joined the U.S. Air Force and served in a 9-month deployment to Saudi Arabia during Desert Storm. After a decade and a half of life as a web developer and information architect, he found his true vocation when discovering the power of hypnosis and neuro-linguistic programming to help himself experience a fuller expansion and expression of life. That, in its skillful use and application, it could be harnessed to assist others to cultivate and release the most powerful elements in the known universe: imagination and trust in oneself to create a new and desired experience of life. In between mastering his golf swing and diving deeper into the fine art of playing sweet guitar solos, he works with clients from his office in Prescott, Arizona to help them achieve personal freedom as he learned about it from his mentor, Richard Bandler. Personal freedom means having the freedom to control your thoughts and to manifest the kinds of feelings you want in your life. That's the hustle and the main purpose of Jerry's work. Let's dive in. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Cammie.
Thanks for hanging out with me on a Friday late afternoon. I'm sure you, like me, I'm normally really tapped out at this point in the game, but I actually have a lot of energy right now. Maybe it's because I knew I was coming on here to hang out with you.
Well, it's a beautiful spring day in Prescott, and I got to tell you, I was actually looking forward to the call. A little bit of butterflies and stuff. Don't know why. I guess I'm just excited about every time I get to chat with you. It's a really very interesting experience. I got to tell you.
I love our chats. So for the listeners, Jerry and I had a chat. Was that on the weekend or last week? I don't even remember. I think it was like on the weekend. We just were like, hey, let's chat about this one thing. And like 2 hours later, we were like, we're still chatting because we like to go down all the cosmic rabbit holes.
Right.
Yeah, which is why I was excited to bring you on the show and have a chat. So before we get into, we'll talk about hypnosis, we'll talk about hypnotherapy, we'll talk about strategic intervention coaching, which is one of your specialty areas. And so before we get into your story, just so our friends and listeners know, I actually have had several hypnotherapy sessions with Jerry, and it has been transformational. And I will say, and we can get into this later when we talk more about the thing about, hypnosis as a modality, I was definitely a skeptic. Not a skeptic in that I didn't believe that it could be transformational. I didn't understand it. I hadn't experienced it. I think it's a very experiential modality.
What was the most transformational thing? What was the shift that you experienced? What would you say that was?
Well, it was almost like if you think of how we are in our conscious mind, it's kind of like last week I posted this thing on Instagram that was these 3 concentric circles, and it was like everything you know, everything you don't know, and then the bigger circle, the biggest circle encompassing the other 2 circles is everything you don't know that you don't know. Right. And you don't know what those things are. And to me, that kind of encompasses like what hypnotherapy has been for me, because when you tap into your subconscious mind, there's all kinds of other information stored, kind of every conversation you've ever had, every book you've ever read, every song lyric that's stored in there. It's like all the data and all the files that you can access instantly.
And it's really special. And it almost has a very spiritual effect.
We'll talk about, I want to talk about you first, but we'll get into my spiritual experience, because my first session with Jerry was absolutely hands down the most transformational spiritual experience I've ever had. And I thought I was pretty advanced on my spiritual path. So we'll talk about that later. Why don't you give us some background, some context? Where do you come from? Where'd you grow up? Kind of a little bit in your childhood, and then kind of walk us through to how you even came across hypnotherapy.
All right. I'll be as brief as I can. My name is Jerry Zaryczny. I was born in the summer of '69.
No, I didn't know that. Is that the summer of love? Is that what they call it?
The summer of love. It totally makes sense. So my parents and their brothers and sisters and their parents immigrated from Poland. They took a ship to Canada, and then they came down and ended up in Chicago.
That's why we're so connected, because the Polish lineage, I'm sure we're somewhere connected, ancestrally along the lines.
Probably. We're cousins.
We're familial.
We're familial.
Yeah.
So, I was born and raised in Chicago in the 70s and the 80s. I've heard every Polak joke there is. So
ditto.
It's great.
What's your favorite or least favorite?
I don't know. Favorite? How do you get a one-armed Polak out of a tree wave? I thought that was funny.
Oh my God.
Funny. Okay, it's good. Allow me to retort.
Yeah.
But so grew up in Chicago. It was a great time. It was like the suburbs. No, well, in the city, but living like the middle class family lifestyle. Had friends in the neighborhood. People went to school together. We did all kinds of things together.
Well, and you and I are close in age, and we grew up in that time when we could still ride our bikes with our friends and play tag, and like we didn't have to be home until it was dark, right? Was it the same for you?
Absolutely.
Our parents didn't know where we were.
They had no idea. Cammie, they had no clue.
Yeah, we just ran around, and then it was like, oh God, it's getting dark. Or every now and then you'd hear a friend's parent screaming for him to come to dinner, and you're like, I guess I better get home too.
That was my Polish mom screaming my name.
I was hearing her in Cleveland.
Jetty! Jetty! They would mock me with that sometimes. They never did it meanly, but everyone.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. So I was went to high school. After high school, I joined the military because I quite frankly didn't have any kind of vision going into college. All I thought of college was girls and partying. That was in my mind. I went to a couple of college parties when I was in high school, like 50 miles away from Chicago, and holy cow, I go, there is no way that I could get educated in
that's a lot of world. That can be a lot of the college experience, right?
That can be a lot of it. So I opted for the military, which allows you to have girls and partying, but you have a job, and so it turned out well. So I took some
what branch of the military were you in?
I was in the Air Force during Desert Storm, Desert Shield, late 80s, early 90s. So I was in Saudi Arabia, got to have quite an experience. I'm glad I was single and didn't have any kids going over there.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I really felt for the people that, guys that were married and whatnot. So, but yeah, that experience on Christmas Eve it had to be 1990 because I was only there for that 1 year. I saw the moon. I know it's going to sound kind of weird. Like I'm seeing the moon. I'm like this 20-year-old kid, a guy, and I'm looking at this moon. I'm thinking, holy cow, that's the moon that I grew up with in Chicago and California and all that. And it made me appreciate, it was like, I can't even explain. It was like, I thought my family immigrated from, socialism, from communism. They took them a long time to get to the United States. And I thought, if I was sacrificed here, if I died, it was worth it because, our family was able to come to United States. It was very important to them the whole time I was growing up. So that was really an interesting experience. And some of it, I think it sticks with me more now than ever. I didn't think of it for a long time, but I don't know, just being a dad and having kids and my wife and all that. So that was the military. Got out, had no idea what to do except I wanted to work inside because I was refueling the plane. I was refueling planes when I was in the Air Force. F-16s, A-10s, C-141, C-5s, a litany of different aircraft. And when it was fun, I loved it. But I was outside all the time, and so got out of the military and I thought I need an inside job. I need to work inside somewhere. So I was into computers, Windows 95, Windows 3.1, something like that. I learned about that stuff, how to use Word in these programs, just a fundamental entry-level understanding of these. And back then in the 90s, people would hire you and you would get decent money because you knew how to use a computer. the owners really were maybe not as savvy or whatever. So I got a couple of customer service jobs, and I noticed that I really enjoyed talking with people. There was something I could really communicate with people. And it was just something that I had in the back of my mind. So then the internet started coming around, got into web development, information architecture, designing information on pages.
And were you self-teaching yourself, or did you take classes, or were you getting certifications through a job you had? How was that knowledge coming to you?
When I first got out of I was taking college classes in the Air Force. I took a whole bunch, like math and English and political science, and I loved going to school. It was like, holy cow, I think I'm a student. I figured out how to study. I figured out how to think about things. I had a goal in mind, and I wasn't thinking, I got to go through all this stuff to get there. It was like, okay, what do I do right now just to do my best, to be like, put my 100% in. I didn't really think like that, but just kind of, I was exhibiting those behaviors when it came to studying.
And I think you and I share like just curiosity, and we love learning, right? We're just curious. We ask questions. We want to understand deeper than just surface. We ask why a lot.
Right. That can get people upset sometimes.
It can seem nosy, but it's coming from a good place.
Yeah. It's just like, how come? And they're like, what? And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So I was studying, got these jobs, learned about the internet. Everything I learned online, except for the college classes I was taking. So started getting into web development because I heard, hey, when I was in customer service, I heard, hey, the internet's going to blow up, and learn how to make web pages and you'll make a boatload of money. And I go, wow, it's kind of interesting. It's art, it's science, it's lucrative. You can learn it on your own. You don't have to go get a degree to get it. So I'm sold. Where do I sign up? So I signed up doing Yahoo searches back then, or Google searches, and would just find stuff to study and found the patterns. And I've noticed I'm pretty good at research. I know what to look for, like kind of reading through the bullshit, what's important to know.
Well, and so you just said something that I think is a link that ties in, is finding the patterns. And so at that stage in the game related to web design, web develop, web architecture, what do you mean? What does finding the patterns, what does that mean for us who don't study the back end of computers and code?
So number one, just understanding the framework. So HTML, it marks up language. It's a markup language.
What does that mean? What does markup language mean?
It allows you to control the presentation of the information on the page. Now, you could be connected to a database, and the database will go into the page, and then everything will get put out dynamically. But you're building that, like the title, the paragraphs, the pictures.
Got it.
But more than that, and that's like the technical aspect of the links and all that. But then you get into like knowing how to think to present the information properly. Everyone, there's a need. Everyone will put so much information out there. No one's going to read it. We're just looking for information that's pertinent to us. So if we understand our target audience, the person who we're really striving to communicate with, and just talk to them, just like you and I are chatting right now.
Yeah.
I realize more and more. Very good, Cammie. Very good.
So it sounds like you also learned and or figured out that you needed to learn more about marketing fundamentals, ideal target market, ideal target client, and how they think to reverse engineer it to build the site that's going to draw them in to read.
Absolutely. To create pages that when the person got to the page, it was what they were looking for, and it was just the information that they needed. Not too little, not too much, and trial and error.
And also search engine optimization, right? And
search engine optimization, which is it lends itself naturally into the content because you're using the kinds of words, the vernacular, the frames that you're setting up that match and correspond to your target audience, whether it's your client, whether it's a customer, whether it's whatever you're doing, even newspaper articles and all that. But
right.
Yeah, it's communicating the message clearly, getting to the point really, really fast, making a connection. So that was really intriguing to me. And when I was in college, I was taking photography and graphic design.